what do you feel just in general about the transition between X and Twitter? Has it changed your use at all? Were you ever on the platform?
I was, I'll be honest, I was never on the platform. So for me, it was just like another name change that's like this new reinvention of like, it's not Facebook, it's Meta now. Like it was just like another one of those like, oh,
Oh,
okay, sure.
I forgot all about the Meta in Facebook
I
one.
know.
I like because that one I feel like it just happened for me. I'm like so long ago at this point. So that is so funny. Okay, awesome. Well, good. I'm happy to have you here. I appreciate you joining us and being here today. My name for everybody who's just joining us now is Nico. I'm here on the social and community crew here at Zeplin and Omelette. And I will let our esteemed guest introduce herself. So if you want to go ahead and tell us who you are, what you do, and what are you working on?
Yeah. Hi, I'm Chloe. I'm a product designer at Zeppelin, and I'm currently working on a 0 to 1 product where we're looking to kind of expand some of our personas in Zeppelin. And I think that's all I can say for right now, but hopefully more soon.
Awesome. I'm glad to hear it. What does your day to day typically look like?
Um, I guess my day to day is usually starting with like a crew sync. So everyone gets together and makes sure that we're all on the same page. And then usually I have like a user call sometime during the week, maybe one or two, just to make sure that we're understanding what our users need and listening to them. And then the rest of that time is usually spent designing in Figma or going to critiques and things like that.
I love that. For user calls, just a quick little side question there. What is your approach on those? Are you usually targeting people for a specific feature, or is there sometimes just like more general feedback that you're looking to get, or how do you usually approach those?
Yeah, well, I think at Zeppelin, at least, it's been more specific about like, we are trying to improve this, or we're trying to build something for this type of user. And so we'll target those a little bit more because we want to hear from those people directly and really learn what they need specifically. So, yeah, maybe a little bit more targeted.
Awesome. I love that. Cool. Cool. Diving into, one really fun part about these interviews is I get to learn more about our esteemed guests. And one of those things that I love to find out are the core beliefs or experiences that have sort of shaped you as a designer. So if you're feeling so inclined, could you please clue us in or let us know what are some of those core beliefs or experiences that have shaped you as a designer?
Yeah, I guess in terms of like a core belief, it's pretty cheesy, but I would say it's definitely users first. Every design piece of feedback or decision I make is really thinking about like, okay, how does this work for the user? How can I advocate for the user with this design or something? And so, yeah, core belief is definitely what does the user need? What is the user looking for in this?
Awesome. I love to hear it. It's so funny because Stacy, another product designer here on the Zeppelin crew last week, also did something very similar. She was very user first too. So I'm starting to sense a bit of a pattern here on our product design crew, which is fantastic. I love to hear it. Love to see that. With that being said, did you have a network of product design friends or like a little community that you used to be a part of, or like how has your experience in the product design world sort of been shaped?
Yeah, so I think it's a funny question that you asked that because I didn't start as a product designer. I actually changed careers. I was a textile designer for a little over 5 years. And so when I switched, I joined a boot camp, and this particular boot camp put me with a mentor. And so the mentor was a product designer working product designer that I got pretty close to. And through him, I think I learned the value of like having a network of product designers and like learning from people in the field, and like we can all learn from each other. And so those experiences are really big. Also, my husband is a product designer,
Oh,
and yeah, that's, I would say he is like the main reason I'm a product designer now, because I was kind of watching him work and being like, I think I can do that, and it looks pretty interesting. And so yeah, because of him, in a way, I'll say I switched careers as well.
I love to hear that. That's so fun. It runs in the family. That's amazing. That is really cool to have that like instant connection just right there. That's beautiful, fantastic. I love to hear it. And I'd be very interested too. Of course, this could be a conversation for a different time. Just to know like what are the things that you two talk about? Are they focused in product design, or do you typically like to sound off of each other too? But we can get more into that. And yeah, you sort of already touched on this. Who or what is your inspiration? Are there like any other things, like maybe a really incredible app design from back in the day that you were like, oh, actually, like I love that and I want to be able to make that for people? Is there anything that you can recall from your past that sort of also influenced this?
I guess, well, my first internship outside of that boot camp when I started working in the product design industry was with an agency. And so it was actually more of like I was a visual designer at that point,
Mm,
but I got to work on some Toyota products.
okay.
And it was really cool to work in like on a platform that isn't web, isn't mobile, and really see all the like little minor details and like government based limitations we had to make. And that kind of, for me, that the challenge of that and all the limits that go along with that really kind of pushed me towards product design, because I was like, this is something that is beyond just making something look really cool.
Mm.
And so for me, learning the needs of those users and like how can we fit it into this like really tight limited box was like, I don't know, that problem solving was like really fun for me. So I think that experience um, led me to product design, and I always like think about that as like one of the coolest projects I've ever worked on.
That is really cool. That it sort of segues into a next really good question that came up in our interview with Stacy, because you were sort of touching on it of like, it's not just making things look pretty. There's so many other things that you have to adhere to, so many guidelines, the accessibility components that you have to take into consideration. So if you had to explain what you do to a 5-year-old, what would you say and how would you do it?
Ooh, okay. That's really tough. I
And
would
and and last time too, Stacy, she brought up a great point where she was like, a 5-year-old today or me at 5-year-old, because that's two very different groups of 5-year-olds.
That's a good clarification. I think 5-year-old, like I have a 4-year-old niece, and like
Uh,
her ability to use an iPad is amazing. Anything that's not a touch screen, she will just like try to swipe. And so that's a good clarification. But I think, okay, so a 5-year-old in general is like anything that you experience or are interacting with in a website, I I make sure it looks nice. I make sure it's in the right place, and I make sure it takes you to the next step. That's, I
Awesome.
guess, what
I
I
love
would
it. I love it.
say.
That it's so funny too, because last week as well, we were both like, "Oh my god, yeah!" Like 5-year-old for me would be like, "There's no technology. There's like, what? Yeah, what do you do?" You're like, I can't really explain it to you. Back in for me, like 1995, like I can't explain it to you. But yeah, awesome, cool, cool. So moving on to our next section, I want to go ahead and throw some words at you, and you can tell me if they are overrated, underrated, or appropriately rated. So first off, we can start with 3 different fonts. So the first font that we're going to find out is overrated or underrated by you is the Inter font.
Uh, I think I have to say underrated, because that's the font I use on my personal resume website. So obviously, I think it's a good font.
Love.
So yeah, underrated.
Love that. Next one is Helvetica.
Ooh, that's a good one. That's So Helvetica is such a seminal font. I think when I was in design school, they made us watch like a documentary about the creation of Helvetica.
Uh-huh.
And that was like the first time for me where I was like, there's so much consideration and work that goes into a font like that we see every single day. It's so part of like our day to day.
Mhm.
So I'll say it's rated. It's like right there. It's not
Perfect.
under, it's not over. It's just there.
I love it. I love it. All right. And your last one is Papyrus.
Papyrus, again, another font that like when you see papyrus, you know it's papyrus right away. So another I'll just yeah, it's maybe underrated because it's obviously has recognition. It you know it. I think it was actually developed based on the Bible originally, from what I know
Oh.
about papyrus. And so for it to stand the test of time, I guess we'll say underrated.
I haven't even thought about that. The conversation with Stacey about this one got turned into us dunking on James Cameron for using it in all of his Avatar sequels. But we just
Yeah,
heard like the full history of it too. That was fantastic. Um,
honestly, yeah, it's so recognizable. The fact that he did use it for that, I was a little bit like, guy, we know what you're doing.
oh my gosh, I love it. I love it. And next, we're gonna get into some specific like design formats, as you might call them. So, what do you think? Flat design, overrated, underrated, or appropriately rated?
I will say also underrated because to make something so simple, it takes actually a bunch of effort. Like it's really hard to make
Mhm.
something flat and simple and look right. So underrated.
I love that. And now a bit of the opposite, I guess you could say, skeuomorphism. What do you think about that?
I'm so glad you know how to pronounce that word. I don't. I don't.
I had to look it up like 5 times. I was like, my search history is literally how to pronounce skeuomorphism. I used to say like skeuomorphism, but
Yeah, it's a
um,
tough one.
yeah.
I'll say overrated on that one. I think it
Mhm.
was a time. It has a place in time when I think designers were showing off a little bit. They're like, look at how real we can make
Yeah.
something look. But nowadays, I think kind of like what I was talking about with the flat design, it's like if you can make something look super simple um, and still look really nice and clean, that is always going to be a bit better.
I love that. I love it. And now we can name off with finish off with a few different design terms too that you're familiar with. Design systems, overrated or underrated?
Totally underrated. You need to have a design system if you want to make a consistent experience for your user and they're not constantly like, what's going on? And so it's almost, I would say, you can't learn a language or learn how to speak a language without understanding like the grammar and like the vocabulary. And so a design system sets up the system for you to be able to speak something fluently and like work within yeah, work
I
with
love it.
something digitally.
I love it. That's a fantastic answer. And I think the last one too, before we move on, is naming your layers, overrated or underrated?
Okay. Maybe like 2 years ago I would have said overrated. But now, especially as a Zeppelin user and also just like in general, naming your layers is just good housekeeping. It keeps things organized. And if you're going to hand off to a developer and you don't want to be like, yeah, frame 1028 is doing this, like you need to kind of have some kind of structure, which again, design systems helps with. So name your
I
layers
love
as
it.
best as you can.
You heard it here first, folks. It's one of the few kindnesses you can extend to the rest of your product crew in design. I love it. Moving on another section. Here at Zeppelin, of course, we are all about workflow. We're all about design to dev and that whole collaboration process. So, how is your relationship with the developers that you currently work with, and are there any room for improvement there?
Yeah, I'm proud to say that at Zeppelin, I think there is a really good relationship between designers and developers. Every developer that I've worked with at Zeppelin, I feel is very committed to quality and making Zeppelin a great tool to use. Um, to facilitate a good relationship, I think regular and clear communication is key. And so that's something I think we're always trying to improve. Understanding scope, tech limitations, changes project to project. So keeping those channels of communication open and frequent and early is really important. So involving the devs in the brainstorming and early in the design is always helpful. Um, so yeah, I'm always looking for ways to improve that portion of things.
Yeah.
One tool I use a lot is Loom. That
Mm.
allows me to like record my voice along with my screen, so I can just show the devs like, "Hey, this is what I'm thinking," and then we can get together afterwards. They can do their research on like, okay, how can we make this happen, and then they can come back to me and tell me like, these are the guardrails for like how we could make that work if you think this is the best design to go forward with, and then from there we collaborate to make sure that it's it comes true.
I love that. I think that's fantastic, especially with the loom, because you can fit so much context into that. Not only from how you're thinking about it, but like literally what you're thinking about, and show it right there too. That's awesome.
Yeah,
That's
especially as
fantastic.
a remote team, like that needs to happen.
Huge, very huge. I love that. Speaking of kind of looking towards the future, as so many of us are, what does the future of design to dev look like in your opinion?
Hopefully it just continually gets more efficient. Like I think we are in the like recent years, we've seen a lot of tools come out that try to help with communicating and having better efficiency between teams, especially remote teams. And so I think that's just hopefully going to continue to improve, and we'll just like keep getting better at speaking each other's language in that sense.
I love that. And you had mentioned so many new tools. Trigger warning for everybody out there. What do you think about AI in the field? Because I know, AI is a very hot topic right now. So many people are talking about how it's going to impact the overall product development process. So what do you think about AI in the field and some of the new AI tools that have been developed?
Yeah, I think AI is definitely a very powerful accessory for us to be using. I don't think it's going to replace anybody anytime soon. I think you still need like a human to design for a human, but it's just, again, it's going to make everything a little bit quicker and a little bit easier, hopefully. Um,
I
yeah.
love that. I love that take on it. I think Microsoft, in my opinion, has like the best AI name because they call theirs Copilot. And I think that's like a fantastic way to think of it is like, it's something that can ultimately help you out with a variety of tasks. And it's like there was a very old adage too, right when AI started coming out in the marketing world that was like, you won't be replaced by AI, but you will be replaced by somebody who's using AI. So they were like, you have to figure out, how to incorporate these new tools in the same way that people had to learn how to incorporate the internet into their workflow too. So it's very interesting too. I love that take on it.
Yeah,
That's
that's a good
fantastic.
argument actually for like it's not gonna like be a flying car all of a sudden. Like you have to like take steps for that.
I love it. I love it. And I think this is a great question for you since, both you and your husband are product designers. What does the role of the product designer look like versus what people outside of the profession think that it's looked like, or maybe what it was like before?
I'm always surprised when I tell people, or like when my husband and I both tell people that we're product designers, because I think people are really unaware that like the apps and the websites that they are using on a day-to-day basis is designed by a person or like a team
Hmm.
of people. So yeah, I think when you try to explain that to someone like, oh yeah, I designed the interactions and the experience inside of the app that you're using, they're like, their next question is probably like, oh, I use like WordPress or Squarespace. Is that what you do? And you're like, sure, in some form, in some way, yes.
You're like, well, the button that you pull in on a on a WordPress plugin. Yeah, I help design the overall structure of that and like
Yeah.
the patterns and all of that too. There's so much that goes on behind the scenes, I feel like. And it almost seems too like you were mentioning there's so many things that product design touches, like the interactions in the car dashboard or, something like that, different projects that you've worked on. It almost feels like, do you ever feel like people take product design for granted? Do you think that people sort of overlook the product UX or that that form of it? What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah. I mean, being a designer myself, I'm going to be like, yes, they do. They don't appreciate me. I feel like that's true of like a lot of design fields where like if it works well, people don't assume that it's like done by a person and that a person has worked really hard to make sure that you don't know that it's designed by them.
Yeah.
Example of that is my husband worked at Uber for a little bit of time, and a friend of ours was like, "Oh, you got a new job?" And he's like, "Yeah, I'm working for Uber." And he was like a driver? And it's like, no, like on the website. And the guy was like, "There are people that do that," and you're like, "Yeah, like it has to be thought of by a person first." But yeah, it's always a fun little like, yep, that's what I do.
Like, yeah, the app, I make the app go. I make the
Yeah,
app work. Like,
yeah, you
explain.
can click things on it because of me.
I love that. I love it. A quick little side note too. We've got a few different comments here on LinkedIn specifically. We have our co-founder and CEO Palin. She also commented, we are big on naming our layers here at Zeppelin, and she was curious about what you had to say about that. She mentioned too that we have our own small plugin that Burke actually helped build for the crew to remind of us of the rules. Is that something that you actively use or that you do get reminded of every day?
I am just starting to build components for. We have a new design system at Zeppelin, so I haven't personally used it that much yet, but I know our crew that's working on it use it religiously. We've kind of jokingly named it Pelinter after Pillin, but it's really powerful. It's really been useful from what I've heard from the other designers. They like can put a design in, and it just tells you like this is not named. You need to fix this, and
Wow.
yeah, it's a little co-pilot for you.
I love it. Pay Linter. I love that. I can't wait to meet her. Um, we have another comment too. Connor loves your shirt. And then we have one additional comment too from Jeffrey. He said it's nice to hear about your work. Very interesting. So again, too, from all of us to you, we appreciate you sharing all of your work and your experiences with us too.
No problem. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, of course. So the next final question that I have for you from our interview portion here is: do you think that designers need to learn how to code?
Um, Biased answer because I do not know how to code is no. However, I would never discourage a designer from wanting to learn. Like I said, any way that you can bridge the gap between design and development is always going to be helpful. It's definitely like a skill that's nice to have, but overall, I don't think it's necessary to know code to design.
Awesome. I love it. Yeah, I think that's the way that you put it is great. It helps facilitate that conversation, and the more fluid conversations I guess you could have with your developer counterparts, the better conversations that will ensue too. I love that. And maybe that's something that our AI copilots will help us out with, is a little design to dev translator of like, you put in, here's what I need to do, and it spits out what you need to tell your developer in their terms that they understand.
Oh my god, that would be amazing.
So who knows? Who knows? Maybe at our next hackathon, we'll team up together and we'll get that put into motion. Awesome. I have a few rapid fire questions for you here now too, before we dive into a very fun little segment here. These ones, if you need to take some time to think about it, you're more than welcome to do so. But we can start off here. If you had to guess, how many rectangles have designers created?
Yeah, millions, maybe billions, because everything starts as a rectangle, and so yeah, I'm billions.
Billions. Okay, that's a good answer. If you had to say an exact number, like an exact billion, how many billions are you going with?
uh, 2 billion.
2 billion. Okay, that's good. That's good. Yeah, Stacy's answer was 1 billion and one. She wanted to do a Price is Right style and try to get as close to the actual number without going over. So who
That's a good
knows? We
answer.
shall see. Awesome. If you could describe your design to dev process in 3 words, what 3 words would you use?
Um, okay. I would say, well, number one, you have to understand what the problem is, and who you're designing for. So understand. Next, I would say iterate. So that's when you're just going through the process, making sure you're, you know, checking underneath every nook and cranny to make sure you've done the thing right? And then communicate. So then you're making sure that you're communicating what you should build.
I love it. I love it. Out of those three, what is your favorite part of the design to dev process?
I like iterate because that's when I just get to like be a designer and like be in Figma and be like, oh, what if I try this and this and this? And yeah, that's the fun part for me.
I love it. I love that. That's awesome. If you could describe yourself in one word, what would it be?
I'll say empathetic.
That's a good one. And if you could describe your design process in one word, what would that word be?
Maybe also empathetic.
I love it. That's a fantastic answer. And I think that that wraps up for all of the questions that I have for you. But now we have the very fun part of our segment in our interview here today. It's a segment called "So You Think You're a Designer," where I will give you 2 minutes to recreate the Zeppelin logo in a JavaScript. It's a web-based Microsoft Paint recreation. So if you want to, you can go ahead and share your screen, and we can start the timer and see how this goes.
All right. Let me remember. Okay, share my screen here.
Perfect. I want to
Okay.
do like a big compilation towards the end with everybody's of like a fun little collage of all of our guests. Fantastic. Okay, we do see your screen. It
Okay.
looks fantastic. So I will go ahead and start the timer. You can feel free to start whenever, and I will start the timer as soon as you start. I've got my eye on the clock.
All right. Yeah, I'll have to remember how to use Paint. All right. I wish I had like a picture of the logo up.
All right, and your time has started.
Okay.
Officially 2 minutes to go.
There's got to be a. Ooh, there it is. I know the angle of the logo is very important. So
Very.
other way. Okay. That's
Beautiful.
better. And then there's like some fins.
I feel like next time I need to play that like Wheel of Fortune music, like that da doo da.
Instead of just me being like, ah, like panicking.
I love what you have so far. This is a very good take on it.
It looks like just like a clementine with like a weird thing on it right now. So that's very sweet, but we'll see. Okay, I guess you can't change the colors on here. Okay, too advanced. All right. There's like a lot. Ooh, that's not it.
In a quick time check, you have 1 minute remaining.
Oh, okay. Oh no. Okay, well I can't draw straight lines, so that's a good skill to have as a designer. God. We'll go red since, and then there's these two. Oh my God.
I love it.
I
This
didn't know
is-
the pressure would be so high on this. Oh God.
You are doing amazing. You still have 30 seconds left, so the world is your oyster.
Wait, why does this look so straight? Oh, I know what I did wrong.
There it is. There
Okay.
it is.
I think because I can't change the colors, I think this is the best I'm gonna be able to do. It looks like a weird basketball orbiting something.
I love it. I think it's beautiful. It's fantastic.
Thank you.
Yeah, I 10 out of 10. Of course, any better than anything that I could ever design or hope to design. So I appreciate your work and your earnest effort here. If you had to do the rest of your design work for the rest of the week in Paint, could you do it?
I mean, as long as we don't think anyone's gonna see it, that there's no like, yeah, as long as no one's gonna see it, I think sure.
All right, sounds good. Palin, if you are listening, expect all of Chloe's work to be turned in using Microsoft Paint. But yeah, that's beautiful. That's amazing, fantastic. And I think that wraps up our session here today. So if you want, you can stop sharing your screen, and we can come back to quorum and give one final goodbye. Again, Chloe, thank you very, very much for your time here today. I really appreciate it. We had some fantastic answers from you, and I really enjoyed just learning more about you, about who you are.